no matter whether it's a good thing or a not so good thing, being there and realizing what's their best interest and not your own best interest. Mom, it totally prepares me for it because I am a vocal advocate for all children. And then also my background is in strategic planning and communications. 20 plus years in strategic planning, marketing, and financial planning as well. I sat on the board at City Credit Union as our marketing director and was involved in every single day-to-day operational decision, directly reporting to the CEO. And then as well, strategic planning at our church, Granbury First United Methodist Church. We're at an awesome point in our area at our church where we're looking where we want to go and where we want to be in the future. So just being a part of that and serving the community at that level, absolutely that relates to being on the school board. So making sure that I'm an advocate, that I'm listening to people. I love to talk to people. I love people to share their stories with them, and being able to communicate that as well. Being a communicator, I think, is key, because when you go out into the public, I know our board members can say this. People ask you, boom, 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 boom. They start, throwing questions at you. You've got to be able to communicate what the vision is of the board, of the district, and whatnot, in a way that people understand, and then also listen to them, so that you can take those concerns back to the board. So I think God's prepared me well-rounded for school board. Thank you.
Okay. Our next question is for Cindy first. It says, part statement, part question. Every student is entitled to FAPE, a free and appropriate public education. That is not happening with the gaps we see in education. What are you going to do to solve this gap? And I believe we're referring to, for our audience, gaps in performance between ethnicity and socioeconomic status.
I think before we can really fix the gaps, we need to find out exactly what is causing the gaps. I know that there are several different schools that some of them are rated better than others, and if you look at them, you will see that sometimes it depends on the class of the people as far as their income level. It will depend on where their background is from, where did they come from, where did their families come from. I think we need to start by saying, okay, this specific group of people, they're struggling for this reason. What programs can we use? What can we implement into our system? Because if you look online, there are several different schools that have implemented different programs. Weatherford GISD right down the road has recently came across the same issue, and I sat down with a lady and discussed it with her, and I'm still waiting on her to get me some of her research, but there's different programs. It just depends on where the gap is, on how we need to go about fixing it.
Thank you. Maureen?
A lot of people don't understand what FAPE is. And what FAPE allows is, say there's a family member, or there's a family who has a student that has different abilities, not disabilities, different abilities. And that child needs a behavioral specialist, or they need an IEP. We currently, I've been working with Diane Fullerton in our special education department, and we have opportunities for improvement there. And kind of like I said before, I never like to look at a deficiency as a shame on us. I look at a deficiency as how can we? So in looking at it in that measure, right now, even in our special ed areas, we have LSSPs versus BABCs. That's a big difference. There's a difference in what somebody can do as a diagnostician versus somebody who can write a behavioral plan. And believe it or not, somebody who can write a behavioral plan, that affects school safety, that affects student success. Currently, we don't have a BABC in our district that can write those types of specific behavioral plans. And that type of a specialist as well is directly related to kids who are on the autism spectrum. So that is the most effective way to help those kids. But looking at it from a general sense, it is our responsibility as board members to make sure the superintendent runs a team that is compliant with FAPE. Every single kid deserves a free and appropriate public education. And when we see gaps, when we see, the ratings of 4 schools going back 5 years that have room to grow, again, not from a negative, let's look at it from a positive. What can we do to fill in those gaps and to get them supported so that they can start performing? And I think once parents understand, and the community understands, we owe that to our children, not only through what's right, but through federal law, then we'll start getting serious about it. And the last thing is volunteer. I always encourage people, volunteer. Somebody's got a gift out there that's good with reading with kids. Somebody's got a gift for something else. The more studies over and over will tell you, those who have helped succeed better. Sorry. That part threw me off.
When referring to the question, I would ask you the rhetorical question, can a monkey climb a tree? Yes, a monkey can climb a tree. Can an elephant climb a tree? No, an elephant can't climb a tree. It's just like people. Students are all different, and we all learn at different rates, and we all learn hearing different things. In our classrooms, that's how it needs to be. We need to take time to focus on every single student. And that's what I love about GISD, about being there, is they take time to check out every single student, help every single student. And yeah, sometimes we have students who fall through the cracks, and we do have that gap, and it does need to be addressed, and it does need to be looked at. And we need to figure out a great way as a community to focus on our schools to figure that out. But the other thing that I'll encourage you with not just being in our schools, but in our community in general, is we need to focus on our students outside of the schools, in our families, in our homes, in our churches, in our workplaces. We need to focus on our students and creating that gap with them and learning with them and teaching them real life skills as well. So I think, yes, we do need to look at our schools. We need to look at how can we shrink in that gap, and whether it be your ethnicity, where you come from, who you look like, I spoke about this earlier, but we all have that opportunity and we all deserve that right to learn. So I'll say yes, in our schools, check it out, but everywhere else in our community, we need to make sure as citizens that we are doing our part to educate our children, and myself as well. We need to make sure that we're doing that together, not just in our schools, but everywhere else as well.
Okay. And this question, first we'll go to Maureen, I believe. And I think this is our school board IQ test. What is the difference between the two parts of the tax we pay? They are called M&O and INS. And I'll fill in the acronyms to help a little bit. M&O, I know, maintenance and operation. I had to ask myself, I served on the school board for 6 years. INS is interest in sinking. That's your clue.
Maintenance and operation, what we provide for the students, the buildings, the tools and whatnot to do what they need to do. The INS, that's those lovely bonds that we love to pass, and then we get to pay down on them and reduce the interest payments on it. Finance is never a fun thing to talk about, but it's one of those necessary evils. So hopefully that passes the IQ test. Thank you.
Yeah, so exactly what you said, when it comes to maintenance and operation, what we're looking at is we're looking at what's going on in our schools and like what are we providing? Are we providing electricity? Are we providing water for our students? So it's those general needs. And I couldn't quote you the numbers right now, but just the amount on electricity and water that we spent last year was a crazy amount, but it was great because we were able to use that building to educate our students, and that's what it needs to be used for. With the INS, it's still a lot of things to look at with that one. For me personally, looking at too and learning, and I don't want to stand up here and lie to you and say, man, I know everything, because that's the worst thing that you can honestly do. So with myself being up here, I would say there's still a lot more research that I have to do into learning with that, but I'm excited to work with our school board to learn more about it and to teach our community more about it, because I would love for us all to get involved. And at our next meeting that if we have a forum again next year, I would definitely love to hear everyone's responses and see if they know what those two definitions are.
Well, I think we're all going to pass the IQ test because he kind of gave us big hints. Maintenance and operation is not just our buildings and the programs that we use as far as electricity and water. I think it also covers the programs we use for our computers needs to be included in that. The software that we use, the calculations that the teachers use when they're trying to figure out grades, that all falls under that. But we also need to be focusing on the education and the programs that we are implementing for the education itself, not just the software. So I really hope that I pass the IQ test on that one, but just like Chris said, I also need to do a little bit more research on that before I give a solid answer.
Thank you.
Our next question is for you, Chris. Do you understand the role of the superintendent? Explain.
So the way the school board is supposed to work, and oftentimes it does work that way, but there are times in anywhere you go where that can change, especially with local politics. And so the way it's supposed to work is we're supposed to listen to what the community is saying. We're supposed to hear that, and then the school board listens to what the community says. They also filter it through the things that they know that the community may not know, and they decide to vote on what's going to be best for our community, what's going to help everyone grow, what's going to help our students best learn. And then if they approve that, they then move it on and they tell the superintendent, and they work with the superintendent on that issue, and they figure out what's going to be the best way. And the superintendent then goes out and he tells everyone in the school district what's supposed to happen. And he explains to them what needs to happen, how we need to impose it, the rules that we need to follow. So our superintendent does an amazing, our new one, he's such an amazing guy. I've gotten to meet with him and have coffee with him several times. I think he's going to do some really great things here, and I think he's an amazing man. And I think he is the ideal superintendent that we have right now, and that he's going to do some great things. So if you need an example of what a great superintendent is, just look at the things that he's doing.
Thank you. Cindy?
When I think about the superintendent's role, I think of what you would hear when you go to work and you hear the HR department saying, go up the chain of command. It starts with our community, and then it goes to the school board, and the school board makes decisions, and then we take that up to the superintendent. And he's the one that takes everything, all the information he's given, all the votes that the school board has made, and he publishes it. And he either implements it if he can't because the school board shut it down or the community's against it and he feels it's not the best thing. Like I said, it's going up the chain of command, and he's at the top of the chain.
Thank you. Great.
Well, from an organizational standpoint, the superintendent is like the CEO of a company. The buck stops there with him. He's responsible to make sure, like, let's say you're with a JCPenney or whatnot, that the individual stores are performing the way that they're supposed to. So he is the buck stops here with what's going on at our different campuses. He is responsible for what's going on. He's responsible for hiring and firing of people underneath him. The board, and it's kind of funny how Chris alluded to, sometimes they don't always operate this way, but the board is supposed to be, is a trustee, as a fiduciary role. So the superintendent is responsible for what is actually, implementing the policy that the board sets, make sure that they're following, state, local, federal laws and whatnot. And then the board, we look at him, we're responsible for two things: hiring and firing of superintendent, and making sure that we're following policy, and setting policy when there's a lack of, a void of. So he's like the CEO of our organization. He's the buck stop here. He's the one that if we feel that things are not going the way that they're supposed to be, or what our kids deserve or what our teachers deserve, he's the one that ultimately is responsible for that.
Okay. I want to invite all of y'all. Y'all are very polite. If you have some questions, feel free to get up and make your way over to the table just outside the door and fill out a question. I think we have time for several more. Are we doing okay on time? Yeah. If you guys don't give questions, you're going to run into the questions that I have. Okay, so this next one is kind of interesting. What personally motivated you to run for the school board at this time? Ms. Cindy.
Running for school board is something that I've thought about for several years. I just never felt that it was the right time for me. I felt I needed to wait until my family had just made that decision together, and now's the time. School safety is a big issue, and grading is a huge policy that I've struggled with. I'd already looked at it. My son last year brought home his report card, and his GPA had dropped drastically. So I started looking at it, and I started looking at the policy that we have, and I didn't completely understand it until it was actually pointed out further at a school board meeting, which is really what helped me. I'd already made that decision because with 3 kids in the system and 1 more getting ready to start school, I don't want to just sit at home and have my opinions and my complaints or my cons. I want to be able to have a voice. If I'm not going to get up and say, I want to help with the programs that are forming the education my children are getting, I don't have a right to sit at home and complain about it either. So why not do it and see what I can do to help not just my kids, but all the kids in the community.
Well, as I said earlier, and I was talking about how I found out Mickey Sharon had stepped down, that kind of inspired me to look into wanting to run. I said to myself one thing that really encouraged me to run, and I said, we need more people, not just here, but in general, we need more people with, I will say, Christian values to be involved in our politics. And if you don't like the term Christian, you can just say good values. But I will say Christian values, that's where I stand. And that's why I really decided to run is I wanted to be a voice for my community, not only just a voice, but to be a voice of reason with those type of values that I have. And so looking into it, I want to look in and see, well, what can I accomplish? What can I do? How can I inspire these students? And so that's really what led me to run, is to do that and to be a voice for our students and to help them and to show what's going on in our community and really to get more people involved. And you know, one of the other big reasons that I did it is students these days feel like because of their age, they can't accomplish anything. They can't do anything in life until they hit that old 18 number, until they're finally an adult. And what I decided to do is I decided to run to show people that you can do whatever you want no matter what age you are. Since I was in the 6th grade, I've been doing things that people would say, man, you seem like you're 30. No, I'm in 6th grade. True story, true story. And I may have been that young, but it's the fact that I felt like I could do something and I wanted to make a difference in this world. And so for you guys just being here today, I want to encourage you and I want to let you know, no matter how young you are, no matter what you think you can accomplish because of your age, you can do it. You can accomplish anything that you put your mind to. And that's one of the biggest reasons why I decided to run for the GISD School Board.
Right.
You have a decision to make, and you look to your family and you said, hey, should we do it? Should we not? I've always felt called to serve. I've always felt in my life that God has called me to different areas to serve. Sometimes that's been in the workplace. Sometimes it's been volunteering up at our schools. Sometimes it's been through softball. I knew nothing about softball, but we didn't have a coach. And gosh darn it, the 12U girls were not going to not have a team. I'll serve. Don't ask me, I represent that here, but I served. So I've always felt that there's been a call in my heart that God says, you know what? When I call you, yes sir, I can do it. I've been one of those people that I can annoy the heck out of some people because when other people say, well, I can't, or you know, it's not possible, sometimes I can be annoyingly positive because I really do look at something as, no, before we just say, yeah, we can't do it, we're not, no, let's look at how can we. So just truly answering that call to service, asking my husband, asking my daughter, okay, this is what it's going to take. Are you guys ready to buckle down and do this again? And having their support and speaking with our educators and our community members who I have their support. And just feeling like I needed to be the vocal advocate for them, to be the voice for our students, for our taxpayers, for our families, for our educators, and saying yes to that call. That's why I chose to run.
Thank you.
Let's see. Well, I may have gotten off. Who is next to go first? Okay, so this is an excellent question because it kind of pushes two things together that's in our community because they've all said that you know, school safety is the #1 issue facing, but we also have fiscal responsibilities. So this questioner asked, the school board took $500,000 from fund balance, our savings or emergency fund this year, to pay for 4 school resource officers. How do you propose to continue to pay for SROs and or hire more? What will you cut?
So when it comes to finances, I kind of have this mindset, you know, sometimes you do have to cut things, but you also have a mindset, you have to have a mindset is, what is your investment worth? So worst case scenario, and this is given by numbers provided to me by the district, worst case scenario, it would cost the average taxpayer $44 a year in Hood County within our tax base to fund the additional SROs to have them at each campus. Now, I don't know how many of us could sit in a room, look at those students over there, and say, you're not worth $44 out of my pocket. They are absolutely worth $44 out of my pocket. I'll give you 88 if I have to. But it's being prudent. Our board does, and I said it before, they've done an excellent job. Every year, we get the superior rating, the first for our finances. They're very prudent. They're conservative in how we fund things. I go to the meetings every month. I sit there and listen to them. I love hearing them. No, they don't do that, but they will. They will debate, and they will push each other, and they will challenge each other. Well, I think this. Well, I think that. I watch them. It's making sure that you have a well-rounded board so that you can have those kinds of discussions, working with people that can have opposing views, but yet be able to sit at a table and say, okay, at the end of the day, what's the most important thing that we've got to do here? And being somebody that can do that, sit on a board and have those tough discussions and look at, does it mean cuts or does it mean investments? Or does it mean reorganizations of funds? So that's the way that I would propose, and I always call people to the table when it comes to safety. Nobody wants to spend unnecessary money, but gosh darn it, yes, I would pay $44 a year out of my tax dollars to ensure safety. Thank you.
That's a very good question. That's something that we all need to definitely look into and look at. When it comes to, whenever I did see that, I did look at our budget. I did see that we did spend $500,000 this year investing in resource officers and seeing what's going on in our community. And what I will say is that's not just for resource officers. That's for looking into that security in general, looking forward with what's going on, whether it be training people, getting involved with that. And so I feel like looking forward at that number, we can manage what that number looks like on a year-to-year basis, whether we want to bring in more resource officers. I feel like 4 is a great goal for us to have right now, but we have 10 campuses here at GISD. I hope I'm saying that right. I believe we have 10 campuses here at GISD, and I want to see what we can do to make sure that all these campuses are secure. Am I saying that we need to hire 10 resource officers? I don't know. That's something I need to look at whenever I'm involved with the school board and with our community and see what's going to be best for us. And look at that going, because out of 4 school resource officers, if we're looking at 10 campuses, obviously not every campus is going to be have a resource officer there at one time. Actually, it's less than 50% that's going to have one there at every moment of the day to help with kids and help with what's going on. As for saying with how much money we pay for that, every time I walk into the school and I see a student or I see anyone in our community that I look at, they don't need a price tag. They don't need a number to say you're worth that amount of money. That's not a thing. If that's how you value people, that's something that we need to look at and we need to change, because people don't have a number on them. People have a face. They have a person that they are. And so that's what we need to look at coming into our school and seeing how we can manage that. Do we need to maybe look at some areas and see if we're able to, if areas have an abundance amount of money that we could possibly use to go towards hiring resource officers, further resource officers? Yes, I'm all about looking into and seeing where we have extra money at and just checking that out. Do I think we need to cut anything? You know, as of right now, I would say no, but that's something that we would need to look at together as a community and as the board and see what's going to be best moving forward. Thank you.
So my answer is simple. I wouldn't cut anything, because I don't think SROs is the answer to the problem. I think we need to have our teachers protecting our students. I know that that's a highly debated topic. I don't think that our teachers need to take a one-day concealed handgun class and we release them to protect our students. Absolutely not. I don't think that is sufficient by any way, shape, or form. But I don't think that having an SRO, one SRO to protect 800 students or more is the answer either. I think we need to look in programs. I mentioned it briefly earlier. It's called Faster Saves Lives. It starts with psych evaluations for the teachers. It teaches them how to protect our children. It gives them the training that they need, and it allows them, provided they want to. Teachers should not be forced to, but I don't think that having one SRO to protect an entire campus is sufficient, especially when it's not in our budget. I don't want to cut programs because that's eliminating things that our children need. We don't need to be cutting programs such as theater or drama or anything like that, because those programs teaches them how to use different parts of their brains that they will use later on in life. So I wouldn't cut anything. I would look at different avenues and different options that are available to protect our students.
Thank you.
I believe, Chris, you'll be the first to respond to this question. And this question, I think, is kind of it's just a topic in elections today in general, is where this comes from. And we're getting down in our questions, so I'm going to ask it. Are any of the candidates, or you, taking any money from outside our GISD district? This is a campaign finance question, as you can tell.
You know, that's a really good question to ask. I mean, you want to know where the money's coming from for each candidate, and I actually am very happy to answer this question. Yes, I have had money come outside of Granbury ISD, and that's because what I have done has been heard more than just in Granbury ISD, especially in Odessa, where I did a radio interview. And, you know, I think I have more support there in Odessa than I do here sometimes. and, you know, it's crazy. Odessa actually had a problem where they had people who were on their school board who's been on there for consecutive terms, and no one's ran. And because I did my interview and they had 3 people enter into the race this year just because of hearing that. And so it's being that voice, having people hear you. So yes, I've received money from that location. I've received money from around Austin, Texas. I've received money from a few places in Florida because I have some good friends in Florida. And it's because they all respect and they all know that what I am doing is correct. And they are more than happy to fund that. Because if you talk to people and they hear something and they know what's right, they are more than happy to fund it. So yeah, I've received amazing support here in Hood County, by the way. You guys have been amazing, and you guys have supported me the most. But yes, I have received money outside of the GISD district, and it has benefited me to being able to speak and talk to you guys.
Well, this is easy. No, I have not. Well, I take that back. I've had one person donate that is not part of the GISD, and that is a family member who stood behind me and said, we support you and we know that you'll do great things. Other than that, all of my funding and support has come from local members in our community.
I'd like to thank my mom and dad, who do not live in Granbury ISD, for the promised donation that is supposed to be coming in the mail. So, yes, that will be outside of GISD because they believe in me and what I'm doing, and the advocate that they know I'm going to be for our students and our educators. But other than that, no, it's the people. I'll tell you what's awesome. It's the people that come up to you and say, this is $5, this is $10, I'm sorry, and they're apologizing, and they say, this is all that I have. That goes to show you that we have people here in this community that really care about our kids and our schools. And I'm sure these guys would agree too. Those $5 can mean more than a $50 check that you get sometimes. So, no, just one that's supposedly coming on its way, but everybody else is within Granbury ISD. Yeah.
We're pretty close on time, is that correct? Maybe a chance for one more question? Okay. So I've had a couple more come in, but I'm going to ask the last question. We had a question about closing the gaps earlier, and there's a trend in public education in Texas to really track kids into 2 different branches: pre-AP tracks for classes and non-pre-AP tracks. So it starts in some districts as low as in middle school, they'll start tracking kids. So for example, in Algebra 1, we'll have, there's only one state course for Algebra 1, one set of curriculum that's to be taught, one set of standards, but we'll have 2 sets of classes with differentiated standards. And a lot of districts have moved to a pre-AP for all, holding one high standard for all students in an effort to close the gaps. What is your position on pre-AP classes for all students?
I think all of our students should be held to a higher standard, but I also understand that there are some students that struggle in some different areas. You might have one student that excels in math, but fails in history. I don't think that it's fair for us to put the child that struggles with history in an AP class. We do have tutoring programs that are available. There are several different options before and after school, but I don't think that we need to expect them to be able to reach quite that level. I don't think that the program that we have right now, putting them on one track, is the right way to go either. There's different options that would allow the students to be able to pick and choose what they want, because I'll be honest with you, when I was a freshman in high school, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. I had no clue if I wanted to go work in the legal field, if I wanted to be a dentist, or if I just wanted to stay home. I had no idea. So I don't think that we should expect them to make that decision either. But I also don't think we should penalize the students so they can't succeed in every subject, because we all know that we all have our strengths and we have our weaknesses. They need to be able to focus on their strengths and get the help with the weaknesses from other sources.
Thank you. Chris?
When I walk through the hallways and I'm able to talk to students and my friends, I'm able to ask them, hey, what's going on? What classes are you in? I hear different answers every day. I either hear, well, I don't ask that question every day, but whenever I do talk to students about it and we are able to talk about it, I hear stuff whether it be, oh yeah, I'm in AP and I love it, or I'm in AP and I hate it, or I'm in regular classes because it's easier for me and I can't handle stuff like that. And I think that every child should be held to a higher standard. I think that's very correct. I think that every child should be held to a high standard because we're able to achieve high things. As for putting everyone on that course of taking that one class that's this pre-AP or AP class, I would say I disagree with that. Because like I was saying earlier, students learn on different levels. We're all different people. We all have different ways that we think and all different ways that we learn. And so that's really what we need to focus on. And I myself, I'll say that I've done a few AP classes, but for the most part, I've stuck with the traditional, the regular classes, and that's been the best route for me personally, because that's what works best for me. I love the idea of having pathways, because we have great pathways at our school. I'm on the current one for fine arts education, and that's where I will get a multiplier, a GPA multiplier, and I say that I will still get a boost without having all these AP classes I've taken, and that's because I've been on the fine arts track, whether with theater and with choir and doing theater tech and all these things, because I run life and sound and I do all those things involving with our high school, and because of that, I will receive some type of GPA multiplier. So going to what Maureen was saying earlier, talking about our grading system, and so is Cindy, talking about a grading system, what happens is that we still get boosts in other areas. So yes, I do agree with them saying we need to look at what's going on with our AP and with that boost and causing that difference, and that's why there is such a gap at times, because of that difference. But we also need to look at those tracks and see that you do get boost because of those tracks. So I am for that, but I am not for the fact of putting everyone in on a pre-AP path.
I think anytime you try to put everybody in the same box, 99% of the time it's not going to come out right. It's not going to work. Now, to answer your question specifically, I'll be honest, I'm old enough to know better to say I do not know exactly whether or not the pre-AP or the AP without doing some research, so I cannot specifically answer that. But I will say that we're all made differently. We all have different talents and pluses and deltas. So deciding that we're going to just put everybody in the same box and we have to go the AP or pre-AP route, whatever you do, whatever choice that you call it, it doesn't make sense to me. There's kids who are excellent in math. There's those of us who barely got through pre-calc. But putting everybody in the same box, it does not allow for each individual student then to rise to their potential. And that's what I'm most concerned about. Not everybody wakes up with the same circumstances every morning. We know that. If you look at our schools that have the gaps, you can clearly see that most of it is socioeconomic. But that's not an excuse for us. Let's figure out a way. We've brought breakfast and whatnot to the kids at school so they have food in their bellies so they feel better learning. Let's play the hands that we're dealt. Let's not make excuses. Let's figure out a way for each individual student to rise to their individual success, to their individual potential. That's what I'm focused on.
Thank you.
And I think it's time for closing remarks. Thank you for the wonderful job you've done with questions. We'll go in reverse order for closing remarks. Each candidate will have 4 minutes for their closing statement. We'll start with Cindy, then Chris, and Maureen. So Cindy Wren.
Well, I would like to, again, thank you guys for all coming out. I know everybody is busy, and like I said earlier, I think it's extremely important that you guys hear what we have to say, especially taking a couple of minutes afterwards to meet us and get a little bit more personal and one-on-one information. There were several topics that were discussed here today, everything from funding to school safety and the grading policies. And I think that there's so much that our schools have to offer, and there's so much room for growth and improvement, not just within the board, but the schools itself. I just want to see what all we can do. Can we work together? Can we work with the students? Can we work with the educators? And what needs to be done to help us reach that A that we need for next year? This year we were rated as a B. We need to reach that A. And I think a big part of it is going to start with changing the way our grading policy works and reaching out to those students that are in the schools that are struggling to catch up, not really catch up, but to meet the same standards as some of the other ones. So I look forward to speaking with some of you guys and seeing what your input is, and I ask you all to remember to vote for Cindy Wren. Thank you.
Again, I want to thank you guys so much for being here tonight. It makes me so excited to see all of you here, and so many people are actually here and want to be involved in our school board and be involved in what's happening in our community. So I thank you guys again for that. Two things that I wanted to hit on just before I was done that I heard during it that I did want to go back and talk about is we did talk about school safety, and we talked about having more resource officers, and then we also did talk about having armed teachers on our campus. That has been something that I have looked into a lot, and I would be open to looking into that idea, to talking about having certain teachers on campuses that would be disclosed by the board, and the board would know along with a few other people, because it would be kept low, like it was talked about before with the Marshall Plan. And so I would be open to looking at topics like that. Another thing I wanted to address is it was talked about earlier, having a type of student liaison program started at the school, and that is a program that actually is happening now. It's called the Superintendent Student Advisory Committee, and I'm actually part of that committee, and we get to work very close with the superintendent. We have a meeting coming up on October 23rd, and we get to talk about what's going on in our school. So I did want to inform you guys, let you guys know that is something that's very much happening now, and I think it's very cool. I'm hoping after these elections that I'll be able to go back to the board and say, hey guys, I'm on the school board for the school and the school board for the district. So that'll be very interesting for me.